Do you know what the predictive accuracy is of the psychologist percentage-wise?
I don't know. Well, let me put it there. Maybe we can extrapolate from this. So when I went through, the unit has tryouts twice a year, right? So in the fall course and the spring course, and they have 100 candidates per class. This is not some secret, but it's 100 candidates, right? So selected from now it's military-wide. It used to be just Army-wide. And so you get 100 guys that showed up. They're the best qualified from the application process. From that perspective, they seem to be, okay, these guys have the best chance. Of the 100 guys that went through my class, which actually at that time in 1986 was 110, we had 10 extra bodies, spares. I don't know why they were there, but it was 110, right? Because I counted them. But normally it's 100. That's what it's supposed to be. Of the 110 guys that started, 16 of us made it to the long walk. Of the 16 of us that started the long walk, 6 of us completed the long walk. Of the 6 of us that completed the long walk and went to the board, 3 of us got selected. So 3 out of 110. Right? So now imagine that 2 times a year, right? We've had courses where one guy's made it. One guy. And think about how much money, the government has spent trying to find these candidates, travel, the whole process. Not only that, you got to send cadre up there, right, to run the program for over a month, right? So there's a lot of money involved in this thing. And you spend literally millions and millions of dollars to get one dude.
Do you know if there's been nobody selected? Has that happened?
I don't know about that, but I do know when I was there, only one guy got selected in one course.
Do you know what the highest number has been?
There was a weird class one time, right? And it was, so this is what, I remember when this happened. There was a lot of pressure coming down from higher, right? TRADOC, maybe USASOC, and they were like, you got to do better. The numbers just doesn't justify the cost, blah, blah, blah. And then there's a lot of pressure about, actually DEI was the thing back then. I hate to say that, but it was actually, there was a lot of pressure about that. You need more minorities in the rank. Well, they don't select guys by their skin tone. It's like performance, right? But that pressure started, in fact, that's one of the reasons I retired in 2001, because it was already creeping in on many different levels. But, so we had one class right around that time. Suddenly we got this like surplus of dudes, like 20 guys made it. It's like, what? That's just insane, right? But what I do remember of that group that went through OTC, probably half of those guys washed out.
Oh, wow.
They couldn't make it through OTC, right? You know what kills everybody in OTC? I mean, no pun intended, but it's CQB, right? They just can't handle that stress, right? It's just an overload for them. So they get washed out anyways.
I'd love to cover just a little bit of your upbringing. You were born in Germany, or you grew up there? Where are you originally from?
Yeah, so I'll expand on that a little bit. So my mother's German. My father was in the Army, 20 years, Vietnam vet. Met my mom in Germany, had me, my sister. So I grew up most of my childhood in Germany. Lived with my German family, blah, 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 blah. I speak fluent German. And then that's how I started. So I grew up in a military culture, right? So isolated in Germany, living in small military communities, that's all I knew. It was almost like an agoge, right? Little Spartans growing up in a military mindset. And it was just a natural fit as I got older to want to join the military. Because I remember my dad, we moved to Fort Huachuca, Arizona, and he retired out there, right? And so he needed a job, and he got picked up with a company called Rantron Systems in Fremont, which is the San Francisco Bay Area, and electronics, right? My dad was a communicator. And so we moved up there. Here's the weird part, right? So we're going way back here. I was like a fish out of water, right? The kids were not the same, right? Going to this high school, I became very introverted. I was a loner. I wasn't crazy, but I was like, I just couldn't identify with these kids. There's different. It's hard to explain. I just felt different from them, right? And so as a result, I just wanted to go in the military. I just wanted to escape. Is what I wanted to do. And so when I was 17, so my dad thought for sure I'm going to college, right? That was his dream. Nobody in my family on either side had been to college. My dad had an 11th grade education. My mom had a 9th grade education. We were freaking poor white folks, And so my dad wanted me the first one to go to college, right, of the family. Right? He wanted to be proud of his son. And I didn't tell him, but I'm thinking, I'm going to go to college. I was dumb as a rock in high school. Not because I'm dumb. I didn't adapt very well. You know, I was high active, but I wasn't hyperactive, and that's what we do now. We label high active boys as hyperactive, ADHD, and we give them drugs, right? It's all BS, right? The whole school system, not set up for boys. No way. But I was that kid. I went through school, got my C's and D's and F's. That's about as good as it got,
Yeah.
I was a C average, maybe D average student, In fact, I had to go to summer school in my senior year just to graduate. I mean, that's how, how messed up I was. So secretly, I went down to the recruiter's office, and I wanted to join the Army at the age of 17, right? And so I remember I'm sitting there. His name was Sergeant Dobson, Staff Sergeant Dobson. Kind of a little portly, redheaded dude, And so he's okay, you're joining the military. And he lays out all the stuff he had at the time on communication. They didn't have computers yet, and he lays all this stuff out there, technical stuff. And I'm looking at him like, yeah, cool, but so what do you got about a Ranger, right? Because I saw an advertisement in TV Guide, and it had one page, and it had his Ranger coming out of the jungle, right? Camouflage, Car 15, rappel, rope, patrol cap. He's just looking badass. And I go, that's it, right? So that's why I went down to the office. And so when I said that, his eyes lit up, and he just wiped the desk clean, right? He pulled out his little pamphlet, and I go, that? And I go, that's it, right? So that's how I signed up to be a Ranger. And then I actually conned my two best friends to sign up with me, right? Because he told me, he goes, listen, if you bring two friends along, they sign up, all of you get $3,000 bonus, and you all get automatically promoted to E2, get mosquito wings, right? I thought that was a big deal. Like, yeah, I'm gonna be a general, right? So no, but so I did. I got my buddies to sign up. So the three amigos, we went in the military together. By the way, we're still best friends today.
Oh, wow.
They're in Sacramento, California, which is funny. One of them is a black guy, and the other guy's a Mexican. And of course, I'm the white guy in the trio, but we're really good friends. And so finally, I go home, and one day I revealed to my dad, that this is what I did, and I could see I broke my dad's heart. That was not what he had intended for me. And in fact, I remember previously, he had made a comment to me when I kind of brought up the military thing. He goes, you won't do good in the military, son. You're lazy. My feelings were kind of hurt. Like, what? He's like, you're too lazy. You won't do good in the military. And I was like a little disappointed, but I don't know if I didn't agree with it, but, I was just a regular teenage kid, Yeah, we like to sleep and fuck off and stuff like that. So that's what happened. I told him, and I realized I broke his heart, and now I felt horrible, man. I'm like, oh, my God. I could just see the disappointment in his face. And I said, Dad, I promise you, I'll get my college degree in the military, make you proud, I said, this is what I want to do. I want to be like you. I want to join the military, but I'll get my degree. I square all that way. So my dad was my hero. He really was. My dad was a good man, very fair, not a big man, actually a very small man, but he had a big heart, and just a good person, And so I ended up, so then they pulled the old switcheroo on me, right? So now I'm ready to go to, Benning and AIT and basic training. And it's like, oh, by the way, your Ranger slot, got canceled, sorry, and I'm like, huh? And they're like, yeah, but it's okay. You just go in and you go through the program, and you end up in the 82nd Airborne Division. That's what they got you slated for. But it's no problem. Just go tell your sergeant major you want to go to Ranger school, and they'll send you. No problem. It's easy peasy. Oh, okay. What a lie that was, right?
Yeah.
Bullshit. Try walking up to the sergeant major after you get there, go, hey, sergeant major, I want to go to Ranger school. Can you make it happen? No, it doesn't work that way. So anyways, I ended up in 82nd. I was in the 325th Airborne Infantry. This was 1981. And that's when they called the 82nd the Jumping Junkies, right? Because, oh my God, dude. It was like prison life. Like we're living in these barracks, and you got dudes, like everybody smoking marijuana every night. They're getting drunk. These are all infantry dudes. It's post-Vietnam era, right? So we still have a lot of Vietnam era vets in there. And it was marijuana, drinking, sneaking hookers up into the barracks on the weekends, parties, beating the shit out of each other. It was insane. And so that my platoon became, ultimately, we were actually out of 15,000 paratroopers at the time. My platoon was ranked the best infantry platoon in the 82nd. They had this thing called RTAPs, right? So it's annual evaluations. You have to go out in the field, and you got to do all this stuff, as an infantry platoon, and they grade you. Well, we were number one, which was amazing, right? I was like, how does that happen with these dudes, right? But they were hardcore. I'm not gonna lie, man. These guys went to the field, they got it done, and so we got selected to be the long range reconnaissance platoon for the 82nd Airborne Division, which General Lindsay was a general at the time. He brought that concept back because it wasn't relevant anymore since Vietnam. Because I wanted an alert platoon, so we became it, and we got signed to the 313th Military Intelligence Battalion. So I did 3 years with the LRPs, went to Grenada. We did some real ops down there, which was interesting. In fact, 2 of the guys from my LRP platoon came out as the most decorated combat veterans out of Grenada.
Can you kind of walk us through how that went down?
Yeah. So I was at the time I was in PNOC, Primary Non-Commissioned Officers Course, E5. And so PNOC Recondo School, they had a Recondo School at the time, was merged together, right? So Recondo was kind of like a mini Ranger school. So we finished PNOC, we're out in the field in Recondo School. And I remember one morning we had a formation and there's all these jets in the air and you could hear just a lot of stuff going on at Pope Air Force Base. And they summoned us together, put a formation together, and then they said, okay, if you hear your name called, go ahead and grab your shit and go back to your unit. Huh? So they called everybody's name but mine. I'm like, hello, what's going on here, right? And then I realized, yeah, we're going to Grenada. So I did get pulled out finally, and I ended up going back to the unit, 313th, and my platoon had already deployed without me, right? And they were in Grenada. So remember the Cubans were occupying the island, and you had the People's Republic Army of Grenada, I think it was called Prague. But anyway, so you got the militia, you got the Cubans took over Grenada. At the time, the president liked the idea that they were so close to us, with that strategic capability. So we need to put a squash that. And my platoon was down there. And what's a long-range reconnaissance platoon doing a small little island? Well, actually, we set up LPOP positions, surveillance positions. There's a lot of little islands, right? And it turns out that the Cubans and PRA had been caching weapons, ordnance, all kinds of stuff on these little islands, right? And they were running guerrilla operations, is what they were doing. So what happened was my unit got deployed, 82nd got deployed, the Ranger Battalion got deployed, SEALs got deployed. Salinas Airstrip was the one strip that everybody landed on if they didn't jump in. And it was operational time. So I get back to the unit, and there's a couple guys stay behind, and they're telling me, yeah, they already left, blah, blah, blah. And I said, well, how do I get to go, right? And they're like, well, we've got a 141 flying out tonight, and we're going to, got to send a bunch of batteries and equipment to the platoon down there. You can go escort that if you want. I was like, yeah, sign me up. I'll ride that pallet down there. So I did, and I flew out that night, landed in Salinas airfield. And the thing with Salinas is you land in the daytime. They don't land at night, right, because it's hot airfield. So they land, they offload everything, and then they take back off. So we show up. I got this pallet with me. I'm the only guy in the 141 with all this gear, and unload everything. And I'm supposed to have somebody pick me up from the unit, from the platoon, right? And nobody's there. And the airfield, airfield commanding officer, right? In fact, he was a first lieutenant. It's him and a couple other guys. And so I'm like, yeah, I'm here with this equipment, waiting for my platoon to pick me up. We're going to haul all this stuff off. And so time ticked by, and it got dark, right? And then finally the lieutenant's like, hey, you can't stay here, right? We're shutting down operations. You can't be here. And I'm like, where am I supposed to go, right? And so nobody's here to pick me up. He goes, well, I don't know where you're going to go, but you can't stay here. I said, seriously? Right? And so, yeah, seriously, you got to go. And where am I going to go? So basically he kicked me off the airfield in Grenada. I'm by myself, right? And it's pitch dark out there. And I'm like, yeah. So I said, okay. I said, can I at least have some bullets? So they gave me a bunch of ammo. I loaded up. And I literally wandered off in the dark, right? And I'm not shitting. That's no bullshit. So I walk off, and I don't even know where I'm going. I know what the island looks like, it's not that big, but I'm like, okay, well, maybe if I just walk around, I kind of probe around and maybe run into the unit or something. I don't know what I was thinking, but can't stay here, so I got to go. So I literally walked. I walked down this one main dirt road for hours, and I ended up right outside of Georgetown, the capital. And there's a lot of activity going on there. And I'm like, man, do I really want to walk in there? Because I don't know who's in there, right? And so I thought about it. I said, I'm not going to go in there, right? So I turned back around and went down the road the opposite direction for another couple hours. And it was pretty spooky, man. Jungle, it was dark, and all of a sudden I heard somebody go, halt, who goes there? And I recognized a voice, Sean Pearson, who was one of the guys on my team, right? I go, Sean? He's like, Dale? So Comstock, right? And we're like, hey, oh my, thank God, and so we linked up that night, right? And so from there on, we started running these operations. So we would go to there's an island called Green Island, which was one of the islands next to Grenada. And so we'd fly out at night, do a night insertion, small orb team, 4 or 5 guys, and we'd just sit there in a hide site for 5 days, 7 days, monitor radio, and just basically looking for anybody coming to the island to recover caches. And that happened. They actually were coming in at night on these boats. They come in real fast. They do a BLS, land on the beach, and then they go and dig up their shit and load it back up. And one of our LRP teams was out there one night. Boat lands. They saw it. Our guys come down there. The interdict them. It was actually 2 of the guys, and just to go check it out. And when the PRA and the Cubans had landed, it was a small team, like 4 or 5 guys. They actually put out left and right security. Right, well, the other guys were digging, and our guys walked into their left flank security, right, and point blank range got opened up on AK-47, right. So they got shot up, didn't die, got shot up, right. So they dive under this other boat that's staying there, and they return fire. Firefight ensues, and then a couple of guys fell in the water. They were dead, and the Cubans picked them up, threw them in the boat, and they hauled off. In fact, the next morning, when the QRF showed up, they actually fished out a couple of dead bodies from the ocean. Were some of the Cubans that they had killed, but our guys had also been wounded, and then those same 2 guys had also so flying back and forth from Grenada to Green Island on the Black Hawk during the day. They saw a small boat capsize with a bunch of kids in there, right, fishing, and so they were drowning. So they hovered the helicopter and got one of the guys' name was Kirk. He fast ropes down, right, and gets right to the bottom, locks himself in, and he grabs one of the kids, right. He tells a pilot to get us up, and as the kid's coming out of the water, he's got a shark in his hand. He don't want to let go of his shark, right, little baby shark that he got. Like, I worked for this, I'm taking it with me. Like, no, you got to leave it behind. But they rescued a couple of these kids, and they got the soldiers' medals for that. So they got Bronze Star, soldiers' medals, Purple Hearts, all kinds of stuff, right? Just from that one particular team. So that was my Grenada experience, and technically, I guess you could call it combat, but I really didn't engage anybody. But I did a lot of surveillance on the field, waiting for stuff to happen. And so I ended up in the 82nd. To continue on this, my story here. And I came up to my 4-year mark, and I was at this crossroads. Like, man, do I want to stay in or want to get out? And I was married at the time. My daughter, who's now 40, holy cow. She was about 5 or 6 months at the time. Like, man, do I want to stay in, or I'm not feeling challenged, and didn't know if I could make it to special forces, And for some reason, I just had this longing to go back to Sacramento and live this civilian life, And maybe because, being a grunt for 4 years, it wasn't very challenging. It sucked. You dig foxholes. You live in the field for 6 weeks, and you stink. You eat sea rations that are cold. It just sucked, right? After a while, it wasn't so glorious after a while. And so I remember I called my mom, and I said, "Hey, Mom, think about getting out of the Army. Would you mind putting up with me, my wife, and my daughter for 3 months so I can get a job?" My mom, in a very harsh German accent, was like, "No, not no, but hell no." Thanks, Mom. So she made a decision for me. But what happened was, at the same time, I got a letter, from the unit, right, saying you're eligible to apply to try out to be Delta Force. Now, it's always funny, right? Because guys will go, "Yeah, I got the letter. They wanted me, but I got a better job. I'm fixing generators on a boat down somewhere in a canal in Panama or some bullshit, right?" But it's a process, right? So it says I was eligible to apply. And I thought about it. I was like, you know what? If I'm going to stay in, I might as well just go to the top, Bounce to the top. Bypass all this bullshit, Ranger School, Green Beret, just go to the top. And so that was what I decided. Now, when I committed to it, literally, I really committed my heart and soul to making selection. And so, without going into all the details, I made it. I was one of 3 guys out of 110 guys that get selected. I was 23 at the time. The other 2 guys were 33 years old. They were Green Berets. I was just a grunt. Never thought it was going to happen. But on the other hand, I kind of knew that there's no way I can fail, because of what I was thinking, right? So this is, and we had talked about this a little bit earlier in the day. So, what is the mindset that's required to make it through this type of selection? So I'm not bagging on the SEALs, right? But I've said this out loud before about the difference between BUDS, and even though I've never been in BUDS, and Delta Force selection. When you look at Ranger School, Green Berets, the selection process is a group event, right? You're running and sucking together, right, and all that kind of stuff. And SEALs, pretty much the same thing. In the sand cookies, Zodiacs, cold, wet, blah, 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 blah. A lot of screaming and hollering. But Delta Force selection is individual merit, right? Every guy that goes through selection for Delta, you go through by yourself. There's no group events, right? And you're given limited information. You're told to do the best you can, right? And so, in fact, they don't even recognize you by your name. They call you a color number every day. You get a different color number, right? So it's almost like they almost dehumanize you, right? You're just a statistic. And they don't talk to you. They don't smile, right? You ask them a question. It's like, what were your instructions? Blah, 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 blah. Okay, do the best you can. But start, do the best you can. How much time do I have? Do the best you can. Have a good one. That's all you get out of them. It's like, hello, is anybody in there, right? But it's part of the shtick, right? There's a reason for it because it gets into your head. And this is what guys have trouble coping is through the selection piece. If it's like that every day, right? You're given a task, but you're not told what the standard is other than do the best you can. How much time do I have? Do the best you can. Like, when's this thing on the end? Do the best you can, right? And so you go out there, if you're really committed to being an operator, you really want this bad enough, you'll push yourself to the nth degree because you don't know what the standard performance is. So you don't know if you're going fast enough or not, right? And so that's what happens is it's actually brilliant because what they do is they force you to beat yourself up. It's like, and you go out there and
you can't pace yourself if you don't know what.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So you push yourself every day till you break yourself down physically, right? So how long can you go day after day, night after night, carrying weight up and down mountains in some of the worst conditions, weather conditions, with limited information, and you push yourself and push yourself and push yourself till things start breaking and ripping and tearing, right? And your body's had enough. And that's the whole moral of the story. They want you physically to be broke because what they want to measure is the capacity for you to continue on here, right? And this is what they're measuring. This is why I said earlier, they're not looking for the best guy, they're looking for the right guy, right? There's a lot of studs, man, they've gone through selection physically, right? But they let their mind defeat them,